stop the Petite Knit hate, she's so great, and other people being like, here's why there's so much Petite Knit hate. And hello, fiber friends. In today's video, I am tackling my very first Petite Knit pattern. So if that sounds like it will be of interest to you, I hope you'll stick around. Hello, knitting friends. Welcome or welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Kristen, and I have never knit a Petite Knit pattern. So today we're diving in to my very first one. Presumably, if you were watching this video, you know very well who Petite Knit is. She is a Scandinavian knitting pattern designer who is very, very popular. I don't know when she started becoming popular. The first thing of hers that was really on my radar was the no frills sweater. And it's exactly what it sounds like, a very kind of plain sweater. As someone who's been knitting for almost 20 years, I was not super interested in that in general. My knitting tastes trend toward the a little bit more intricate. I like a lot of cables. I like projects that can be challenging. Many of her patterns are pretty straightforward, basic styles. Originally, it was not my intention to not knit any of her patterns, but as, you know, a consumer, not just creator of online content, at some point it just started to feel like everybody was knitting her stuff. All the vlogs, all the podcasts, everything was about Petite Knit, and I just didn't feel like I wanted to contribute to that. There are a lot of really talented designers out there. And if you'll recall my video about whether knitting has gotten boring, seeing pretty much everybody knitting the same few patterns, particularly in a lot of the same neutral colors, just became a little bit monotonous, and I just didn't feel like I needed to contribute to that. And none of her patterns were really, I didn't feel like I was making like a sacrifice. Like, she has some very nice patterns, but there was nothing I was like, oh my gosh, I have to knit this, but no, I'm not gonna cave to the pressure. I just, in general, wanted to make an effort to be creating content that was not as repetitive. Whether I've been successful with that or not, who knows? Probably not. More recently, I have been seeing some videos here on YouTube with people being like, stop the Petite Knit hate, she's so great, and other people being like, here's why there's so much Petite Knit hate, and a lot of back and forth. I don't really think there's any hate. I have not seen any hate. I have seen people saying, hey, there's a lot of stuff out there. We don't all have to knit the same thing, but I haven't been really seeing any hate. But with a lot of this discourse, I thought it was high time I tried one of her patterns just to see what all the hype was about. So in addition to that, I thought if I was going to try one of her patterns, I really may as well try it in the quintessential Petite Knit yarn. Petite Knit knits with a lot of, a little bit of a tongue twister, Petite Knit knits with a lot of Sandnes Garn yarn. Maybe not exclusively, but she uses it quite a lot. And I had not tried, I think I had at some point purchased like one ball of Double Sunday or something to try. Just like literally just to try out, never used it in a project. So I thought I would go ahead and tackle this Petite Knit project in Sandnes Garn Peer Gynt. So today I'm going to be sharing that project with you. I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes of behind the scenes through my process of getting ready to knit and of swatching, and then we'll see how things are going. All right, friends, excuse the mess, but my yarn has just arrived, so I thought I would share it with you. So, I'm going to knit a Petite Knit pattern. I obviously need to use the quintessential Petite Knit yarn, which is Sandnes Garn Peer Gynt. So, I ordered this from Barnyard Knits. They had the best price on it. I was really trying to get a little bit of a deal because I'm not really buying yarn now, but like I said, I have to use the perfect yarn for this. And so Barnyard Knits had the best price on the Peer Gynt. It's not a whole lot of difference. So like Jimmy Bean's wool was $9.40 and Woolen Company is like $9.70, and I believe this was like $8.75 or something, but I needed 9 balls of it. So this color is eucalyptus. Love this. Really beautiful. My phone is upside down, and so the button is on the, and it's like throwing me off. I've never used this yarn before. I'm gonna start swatching. So just a quick update on this project. I have swatched. I was really not sure about the recommended needle size. It was a US 6 for a 20 stitch over 4-inch gauge. I thought I was gonna have to go up to a 7, but I went ahead and started out on a 6, and I got gauge on the first try. So this is definitely not a super soft yarn. It's very hairy. I don't know if you can see that. You can see, so it's got, I wouldn't really call it a halo because it's, well, maybe a little bit, but it's definitely more of a hairy yarn. Of course, this will be a slip over. Obviously, I'll be wearing things under it, but it did soften up with some blocking, but this is definitely like a, has some tooth to it while working on it. Since I got gauge, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. All right, so as you can see, the project I have selected for my first foray into the Petite Knit universe is the Lulu Slipover. So I've tried to pick something that, I mean, I'm not gonna say is not popular, like all of her patterns are popular. It's maybe not the most popular, and something I have not seen on like every vlog or podcast. So it's not, hopefully, super repetitive. I did, caveat, kind of try this project once in that I bought the pattern a while ago. I got some yarn for it. I tried it out. The yarn was completely wrong and I just gave up. It was just not a good yarn. So Joann's is out of business now. I don't know if they're selling this elsewhere. This is the Eddie Bauer Woolpaca. Terrible. This is not a good yarn. Is supposed to be 80% extra fine merino, superwash merino, and 20% alpaca. And it's just, it's like the wrong part of the, it's got like a ton of guard hairs in it. It's no good. And it especially wasn't right for this pattern, which needs more structure. So as you see in the previous video, I went through, highlighted everything for my size. Is generally how I approach patterns, so that I can then take the digital file, and I usually save it to Dropbox, so that I can access it on all of my devices. You know, wherever I am, I'll have the pattern and we'll have my stuff highlighted. But I did print it out so that we could go through it a little bit. And I swatched and I got gauge. So let's see where we are. So as I said, the yarn I am using for this is the Sandnes Garn Peer Gynt in this lovely eucalyptus color. I really do love this color. This is beautiful, like a green gray, just lovely. And this is how far I have gotten. So this is 1 ball of yarn. So this and my swatch are 1 ball of the Peer Gynt. So I have knit the back of the slip over all the way down to right here is where I'm going to be starting the armhole shaping. I feel like this is like it's a stockinette. It's going to curl, but I just feel like it is curling so much more than other yarns. that I have worked with. I don't know what that's about. Even my swatch, you know, I blocked it and it's still curling. I don't know what that's about. So let's talk about the yarn. This is definitely, as I said, this is a sturdy Nordic yarn. This is meant to keep you warm. It is not the softest. It did soften up after blocking, and it also evened out a little bit with blocking. So you can see this looks nice and even. I think this, I mean, it doesn't look, I don't think it looks bad, but it doesn't, it definitely, you know, has some parts that are not looking super even, that are looking a little rowy. So I do think that the blocking helps with that. I have major concerns about, so as you saw in the photo, the Lulu Slipover has a very high neck. I don't think I'm going to like this. I don't. So I'm a little worried. Am I blocking my microphone? The neck is not like, it has a high neck, but it's not super close fitting, at least in the photos. So I'm a little bit hopeful that maybe if it's just kind of standing out a little bit, it won't be so rough. Other than that, this is a slipover. It's meant to slip over your other clothes, so that'll be fine. But that high neck is giving me a little bit of a pause. I like the stitch definition on this. I like the apparent sturdiness of this. I don't think I would use this again for something that was not meant to be outerwear. It's just not soft enough. That's, you know, so maybe some like mittens, okay, maybe a hat, but I don't think, just based on the swatch, that I really want this, you know, definitely not on something that's going to go around the neck. Now, maybe with, you know, finishing the garment, washing, blocking, maybe it will continue to soften up. Maybe it really will be fine, but I feel like maybe this is more outerwear friendly. But the color is lovely. I'm not loving knitting with it. It is a little rough on my hands. Nobody wants to focus today. I don't know what we think we're focusing on. But the stitch definition is excellent. So this yarn, kind of a question mark. I won't really know until everything is done. But initial assessment, I don't really want this next to my skin. However, the color is beautiful, and I do love that. I'm really kind of baffled with this, the curling. I certainly hope that's something that can be, you know, once everything is picked up, and, you know, hopefully that will not be a problem with all the ribbings and trims and things, but it just seems curlier than other yarns. All right, so now on to the pattern. So overall, I can see why people, especially maybe newer knitters, are maybe gravitating toward Petite Knit. This is very clearly written. For my taste, it's too wordy. There's a lot. First of all, there's just a lot of white space. I prefer my knitting patterns to be a little more compact. But overall, it seems very repetitive. You know, so like all of this part here, which I don't want you to be able to read it, but, you know, you can see that's about 6 lines. And you could compress that into work and increase every other right side row for 6 times. You just need 1 sentence, but instead it's 6. So again, it's not an error. I find it a little bit wordy and a little bit repetitive. Definitely there are parts that, you know, she could have saved like a page worth of instructions by just saying, work the remainder of the front as for the back, because it's identical. So I do think that is probably very helpful for newer knitters, but as a more experienced knitter, it just seems like a lot of an extra verbiage, you know. So this is like 12 pages worth of pattern, and almost this entire thing is knit and stockinette. So it just seems a little excessive. But that's personal preference, not an error. A couple of things about the pattern though did draw my attention. So one is that the armhole depth for every single size is the same. And I know it's supposed to be, you know, oversized with this big armhole, But if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 sizes, and the armhole length is the same for all of them, that's a very different silhouette between an extra small and a 5XL. That's going to fit those two sizes very differently if you have that same depth. So I find that a little odd. Everything, like I said, is basically stockinette and some ribbing, except for these button plackets on the side, which are double knitting. So double knitting is not it's not difficult, but you need to explain it well, and it's a little fussy. So a couple of times in the explanations for the double knitting, it says, see a video of how to do this at petiteknit.com. And I clicked on that, and it just takes me to the homepage. So, it's great if you have tutorials to show people how to do these things, but I really think you should be linking directly to them. Don't just, shove people over to your website and make them look around for it. I find that odd. As meticulous as everything else is written out, I feel like that's a little bit of an oversight. And then the other thing is, throughout this, she uses an Italian bind off. I'm sure she has a tutorial for that, but there is no link to one, and there is no explanation of the Italian bind off, which again, just seems like an oversight and kind of surprising given how clearly everything else is written out. And especially if we're talking about, a pattern that seems pretty clearly geared toward newer knitters. An Italian bind off is not, sort of a basic technique you learn when you start knitting. It's definitely something a little more advanced and not something you would assume people know. So that seems like something you should have, a link to a tutorial, a description, something. So overall, again, this is a pretty straightforward pattern. It's mostly stockinette, so it is very clear. Everything is written out to sort of minimize any confusion for somebody who is a newer knitter, any confusion about how many times to do something, where, sometimes instructions will say, repeat such and such 9 times, but it's not clear if that means 9 times total or after the first time you did it. I know that's something that can throw people off in patterns. None of that stuff is in here, which is great. But there are a couple of spots where I just feel like tutorials, a direct link to some tutorials would have been helpful, and they aren't there. And it just seems sort of kind of like an odd oversight. I know one of the common complaints initially about Petite Knit is that a lot of her designs weren't size inclusive. I didn't go back and look to verify whether that is true or not. This one obviously has 10 sizes, as I said, but also, as I said, there seems to be a little bit of weirdness with the fact that all 10 sizes have the same armhole depth. Find that a bit odd. So I can't speak to, it seems like there's been an improvement in the availability of more size inclusive patterns, but I can't speak to how well done that is. The other thing here, there's no schematic. I think that's, personally for me, that is a red flag. Simply knowing the bust circumference, maybe for something like this, might be enough, but maybe not. And I really think you should have a complete schematic showing people the armhole depth, which in this case is the same across all sizes, but the bust circumference, the neck circumference, the body length, and all this has is a list of the bust circumferences and the total length measured at the mid back. And I personally don't think that's enough information to help people determine the correct size. So this is supposed to be oversized, but still maybe a shoulder width measurement, a back neck width or a neck circumference, body length. You don't have to worry about sleeves in this case, but really people, I think, should have that information available. And it is not here, which I find odd. As I said, I haven't tried her other patterns. Maybe for other stuff, real garments, she does schematics. But personally, I find that to be a big oversight for a pattern designer not to include a schematic. So you know what you're getting yourself into, and you know what your measurements are so you can figure out if you're off the mark while you're working. So that has been my experience so far with my first Petite Knit pattern. Pattern is clear. I haven't encountered any problems with it. I haven't knit that much. I don't expect to encounter many problems with it because it is mostly stockinette. But I do think there are some minor issues that stood out to me. Your mileage may vary whether those things are important to you. I have more questions about the yarn than I do about the pattern. So stay tuned. I will continue to work on this project. It is working up very quickly. So honestly, I just did this in about, I don't know, 2 days. It was very fast. And I do have a lot of other projects on the needles right now, but I do expect to be making some kind of fast progress on this. And I will continue to update you on my experience with my very first Petite Knit pattern during the regular podcast episodes, which come out once a month. What do you think about Petite Knit? I'm not trying to like start a huge debate, but I would love to hear your experiences with her patterns. If you've tried them and you know that her other patterns do have schematics or better linking practices or whatever, I would love to hear about that experience. I would also love to really hear about your experience with the Peer Gynt yarn or any of the other Sandnes Garn yarns. I don't think I've tried really any of the other ones either, but particularly this one. I'd love to know what I'm getting myself into here. All right, friends, thank you so much for joining me for this week's video. If you enjoyed it or found it entertaining, I hope you will give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. New knitting videos here every Saturday. Next week's video will be a regular podcast episode in which I will have one at least finished object, many whips, and some acquisitions, and I will also be announcing the winner of the free pattern from last week's video. So if you haven't watched that yet, be sure to do that and enter to win a free pattern. If you're looking for me on social media, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Media Peruana, and I will see you soon in another video.